bringing peace and security to the world.
Hello, Simon Cardy from iGen here, and I'm here with Matt Perslow. And we are here by the Call of Duty Black Ops 7 booth to talk about, you'll never guess it, Call of Duty Black Ops 7, but also Battlefield 6, and why this year is kind of interesting because it's the first time in a long time it feels like not only Call of Duty has some genuine competition, but it used to sort of like an age-old battle between Battlefield and Call of Duty. It's been a long time since we've felt that sort of rivalry kick in, I think, and I don't know, it's kind of interesting to see both of them. I don't want to say return to form because mixed histories for both, but I don't know, what's your feeling initially, Matt, on the return of Battlefield, and does it still have the juice to take on the behemoth that is Call of Duty?
So I think Battlefield it's back, and it is back to a very specific formula of Battlefield. It really does feel like it has honed in on that Battlefield 3 and 4 kind of era from almost, like, we're talking about 10 years ago now. And so because it's going to that after several iterations where it very much hasn't been what people fondly remember as the golden years of Battlefield, I think that's got people excited. I know there's been some ups and downs in the recent betas, elements that have changed in like rush mode, for instance, have not been that well received. But I'd say in general, it really does feel like after Battlefield 5 and 2042, I don't want to say that they came out and died instantly, but there was a lot more kind of trepidation and unsatisfaction with what those games provided for Battlefield fans. And so I think this time it really does feel like they're coming out swinging, largely because, yes, it might not feel like it is an advance in Battlefield in terms of it's not doing a huge amount differently, but it feels like that's what Battlefield fans want. What they've been asking for is solid, traditional Battlefield, and it does feel like we're getting that for the first time in a while.
Exactly, they're giving, presumably, people what they want, and I do think, fundamentally, despite being online first-person shooters for the most part, they offer fundamentally different players, Battlefield and Call of Duty. Call of Duty, traditionally, run and gun, tight maps, high rate of fire, that's how you're going to win most games, twitch reflexes. I'm getting older, I'm hanging on by a thread to being good at Call of Duty. Battlefield, though, much more tactical, much more team-based, much more objective-based, and I tend to kind of suggest more long-ranged battles, less close-up encounters, more, taking up positions, holding down positions, sniping, which is how I play Battlefield. I don't want to generalize everyone, but they are for fundamentally different players, and I do think over the last few years, Call of Duty is kind of, because it hasn't had that genuine competition, kind of tried to take everything, whether it be Warzone, zombies, multiplayer campaign, try and take the whole pie, whereas Battlefield's trying to nibble away and taking back some of it. I think that's exemplified even in whether, you'd assume Activision knew a new Battlefield was on the way, but in this year's Call of Duty and Black Ops 7, there is this skirmish mode for multiplayer, which is kind of in between a Call of Duty and Battlefield mode, which we'll see if it's any good, but, I still feel like if you're looking for that tactical warfare, you will head to Battlefield, at least for multiplayer, because I do think, historically, Call of Duty's campaigns have been stronger, and I think this year, we've barely seen anything of Battlefield's campaign, but Call of Duty's, in my eyes, is looking strong, especially if it's following in the footsteps of last year's. But an interesting point is, Battlefield 6 is coming with its own standalone free-to-play, not Warzone, I would say it's a Battle Royale mode.
Yeah.
Do we think that is going to be enough to take Warzone players over to Battlefield?
I think the way that Battlefield is approaching this is kind of, as you say, it's nibbling at Call of Duty's pie in lots of different areas. We can't really speak that much to the Battle Royale because they've shown very, very limited amounts of it. It is essentially, at the moment, a trailer for Battlefield Labs. And that's about it, quite honestly. Whereas on the multiplayer side, at least we can see like how they are standing up to the fight that Call of Duty is putting up, right? They have team deathmatch and sort of like those smaller modes have been part of Battlefield for a long time, but it does feel, particularly when I went to play it at preview not that long ago, it really did feel that they are pushing more effort into that. The maps are very, very specifically designed that within the large scale maps that you have for conquest modes and the larger sort of battle types that you have in Battlefield, within those are smaller maps designed to be played like Call of Duty, like full infantry style battles. And so they definitely know what they're doing in the fact that they want this game to appeal to maybe people that are infantry only, close quarters PvP players, with the idea that then you learn that map, and then you start to push to the outskirts in Conquest mode, where then you learn much more of the very heavily objective-based, big destruction modes. And so I think if there's not a fight being put up by Call of Duty, I think Battlefield is in not necessarily defensive mode, but actually offensive mode. They want to pull in some of that. Almost certainly this free-to-play Battle Royale, the fact that you won't need to have bought Battlefield 6, that proves that they really do want to take part of that pie.
Yeah.
I think what the big question is then is the campaign going to be anywhere near as good as a Call of Duty campaign? Historically, Battlefield a bit hit and miss on their campaigns. Bad Company 2, excellent campaign. Bad Company 1, funny campaign. Battlefield 1, really cool idea when it came to playing as different soldiers at different points in the war.
Got thoughts on Hardline? Interesting.
Interesting, if not successful.
Yeah.
Battlefield 5 a little bit weaker. Battlefield 2042, no campaign at all.
Non-existent.
And so the big question is what will this campaign? We do know that there's elements of like defending the US from invasion. We've seen big kind of New York battles. Private military companies doing bad private military
Not again.
stuff. Good God. And the things that we have seen of the campaign is it almost looks like World War II chaos in modern day warfare.
Yeah.
I think then it's like how all of these modes coalesce together, right? Yeah. What we do know is that Battlefield's always going to take the more tactical approach. There's always going to be the very tactical feel to like the gun modding system, very tactical elements of mantling your weapon on cover, peeking behind
And just
corners.
classes, right?
Yeah, and classes, you know, sort of like I historically have always been a bit of a support player. I've been playing Battlefield since 1942, not the year, obviously the game.
Wow.
And I've always gone for the medic support kind of classes like your engineers. And it's really good to see that that class system is really tightly defined this time around. And I think that's what gives it that unique perspective on PvP that maybe Call of Duty doesn't have. Call of Duty is a bit more like, play loosey-goosey however you want.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no denying Call of Duty is just mammoth. The amount of players that play that game, including me, a lot of the time is there to be seen. But I don't think there's this invulnerability. I don't think there is this little, chink in their armor that kind of maybe some of those players could make their way over to Battlefield if it's getting good word of mouth, because Call of Duty is by no means perfect. People are being annoyed by, the pure amount of goofy skins in that game. There's some just outrageous ones this year. The use of generative AI, irks some people. Whether it's meant to be in the game or not, it's made its way into the game. And, these sort of things do gradually build and, grind against players. So we'll see if Battlefield can kind of be more of that sort of, boots on the ground, what people want from this sort of game. I think it has promised, but yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I think a really important thing is part of the campaign. This is the strangest looking Call of Duty campaign that I have seen for a long time. I know Black Ops 6 has some missions in it that do hint to a more sci-fi kind of route, almost like an occult, weird experiments underground in labs. But the first trailer for Black Ops 7 basically didn't look like a Call of Duty game, it looked like a sci-fi shooter. And I think there are people that built their love for Call of Duty around modern warfare.
Yeah.
And I think if Battlefield is offering that sort of campaign, a boots on the ground, using actual M16s and Beretta M9s, rather than things that feel like they were cooked up in a lab, I think that, particularly when you think of what happened when Infinite Warfare came out, which annoys so many Call of Duty people that didn't want to be in spaceships, they didn't want to be wall running. I think there's going to be a team of Call of Duty players that don't want the weird hallucinations, they don't want the kind of strange future that Black Ops 7 is giving. Yeah. And so maybe Battlefield is their safe harbor.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of months to see which comes out on top. In an ideal world, they're both very successful games. So we've got Battlefield in October, Call of Duty in November. We'll see how it pans out. For more from Call of Duty, Battlefield, other first-person shooters, make sure to keep it locked to IGN, please.